AI is telling you, the human, what to do.
Right.
But in the agentic way of working, it should be you telling the AI what to do. If you had an assistant today, a very capable, very smart assistant, what work would you hand off to them? All of that busy work we take away and we design an agent to do that work. A parallel AI employee for this person.
This is the Future of the Future show. I am your host, Mateo Berbejillo. AI is forcing companies to rethink not just their tools, but their entire operating model. What does it actually mean to rebuild a company around AI? Not as an add on, but as the core. And if AI agents become part of the workforce, how do you design systems where humans and machines truly collaborate? In this episode, we go deep into the idea of refounding companies in the age of AI and what an agentic way of working looks like in practice, day to day, decision by decision. To guide us, I am joined by Sid Bharath, someone who's been at the forefront of helping companies rethink how they operate in an AI first world. From treating AI agents as employees to redesigning workflows and unlocking real ROI, Sid brings both the strategic lens and the practical playbook on what it takes to build the next generation of companies. Sid, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Mateo. It's great to be on the podcast.
Sid, you talk about refounding companies around AI. What does the agentic way of working actually look like in practice inside Refound day to day?
Yeah, in inside our company, when I wake up in the morning, I have my AI agent that's already looked through my emails, my calendar, my Google Drive, and then come up with a plan for my day. And so it says, hey, you have uh, 5 emails to respond to, you have to create an invoice for this person, and you have your personal training session as well coming up at the gym. So it includes some of my personal life. But what's cool about it is it's not just telling me what's happening, it's actually doing work for me as well. And that's where the real difference is, right? When you think about the way people use AI today, you go to ChatGPT, you ask it questions, it tells you, and then you go and do the work. So the AI is telling you, the human, what to do.
Right.
But in the agentic way of working, it should be you telling the AI what to do. And so when my agent gives me my morning brief and looks through my emails, it says, oh, hey, you've got a podcast coming up with Mateo. I've gone and done the research already for you, and I've presented here's like a talking points, right? So I don't have to go and do that myself. Or John has sent you an email asking you for a proposal for the idea you spoke about. I looked at the transcript and I figured out what the idea was, and I took the proposal templates from the business, and I've created a proposal for you. Do you want to send this to John? So all the work gets done by the AI, and I tell it what to do or make changes.
How do you decide what decisions the agents are making versus the decisions where you are still deeply involved in calling the shots?
Yeah, I think it's like when it requires some creative thinking, strategic thinking, I always want to be involved in calling the shots. And so, and also when it requires like customer communication, and I know some people like to automate that stuff and have the agent do that on their behalf, but for me, it's a very personal thing when I'm talking to, say, a customer, and that's part of our service as well as the hand holding. And so the agent will pass it through me for my approval. And so I'm always the human in the loop in those kind of workflows where it's like customer conversations, strategic work, creative work, that kind of thing.
You said AI agents should be treated like AI employees. How do you design workflows where humans and agents collaborate effectively without really losing control?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing that we do is we go and interview all of the employees at a company. We ask them about their day-to-day work. What do they do? What tools they use? How does it go? What is the flow? What is the process? And then we look at that and we kind of extract what is the value of the person there. Like what do they really want to be doing? And all the other admin work, the copy pasting of data, downloading and uploading and opening multiple tabs and spreadsheets, all of that busy work we take away and we design an agent to do that work. So then what happens, it now becomes a parallel AI employee for this person that is doing all of this other admin kind of work, and the employee is making decisions and guiding it to do the work.
Got it. Um, for mid-market companies, where should they actually start? What are the first two, three high-impact use cases where agentic AI delivers real ROI quickly?
Yeah, I think the number one place to start is really get an understanding of the way your company operates and where people are spending a lot of their time. So you have to know where time is leaking or where money is leaking or where the friction points are, right? I'll give you an example. I think like depending on the company, if you have a sales department, typically it's the same thing. Your salesperson has to uh, reach out to someone, reach out to a prospect, then they have to book the call, then they have to research the prospect before they get on the call. Then they do the call, then after that, they have to go and update the CRM, and then they have to go create a proposal, and they have to book the next call, and then you have to present the proposal. So if you look at that whole process, a lot of the work involved in the salesperson's workflow
Right.
requires updating a CRM or creating a proposal or things that are not part of their, like their core skill set, right? Their core skill set is, getting on a call and doing a sales demo, sales pitch, right? So, um, if you can break down the way people work that way, and then you can find those areas where they're doing work that is not kind of like their core skill set or not worth their time, and find and build an agent to automate that work, that's like a huge win right there.
And let me ask you this: how many companies talk about AI as a tool, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what mindset or structural shifts do you think is required to move toward really becoming truly AI first?
Yeah. I mean, I think the number one mindset shift is to realize that AI has gotten to a point, especially in the last few months, Opus 4.6, GPT 5.4, the latest gen of models. And just today, as we're recording
Yeah.
this, Anthropic announced Opus 4.7, which is even more agentic. And by agentic means that it's able to take an instruction and connect to various tools and make decisions, reason through that instruction, run it, connect to tools, get more data, make decisions, and then produce a final output.
Yep.
You could tell it to do something and it gets the work done. And that's the core mindset shift is of AI is not ChatGPT anymore. It's not just asking it a question and having it give you an answer. AI has become a thing that can reason on its own and use tools and actually do work, right? And so the core shift is to think of, a simple question I ask people, because usually when I ask them, hey, like, how can AI help you? They're trying to think of like, ChatGPT kind of like, how it can respond or automations. And it's very hard for them to know what AI can do. So the way I try to put it is if you had an assistant today, a very capable, very smart assistant, what work would you hand off to them?
Right.
And that's a much easier answer for them to know because they know instantly, oh my God, if I had an assistant, I would give them all of this stuff. Well, that's what the AI agent is. The AI agent is as capable as a real human assistant in a lot of things. And there's so many things you can hand off to that.
How do we go? So, for example, let's say I have a Claude code subscription. I have the cowork. I have code. I have the chat, right? And I use it, but it's more like in demand, right? Like you were saying before. How do I go from there to having a ready agent that knows what they are doing and can do the same thing day after day, even without waiting for me to do any prompting or anything?
Great question. I think like, again, with Claude Coa, Claude Code, you kind of have to prompt it and tell it to do stuff,
Yep.
and when I was first building out my personal AI assistant in Claude Code, which I call Jarvis, not a very creative name, I know. Honestly, like literally every engineer in the world calls their AI agent Jarvis, and I'm like, I should have been more creative. Anyway, um, I created skills that I would have to invoke myself, and it would go and run a series of instructions. But yeah, like you said, you wanted to do it on its own. You wanted to like 8 a.m. every morning do a certain task for you, right?
Yep.
or you want it to trigger when something happens. So, for example, when we finish recording this podcast, you would want an agent to take the whole recording, to chop it up, to do the thing and produce it for you, right?
Yep.
Instead of you going and telling the agent, "Hey, the broadcast is on. Can you go do this?" Right? The way I do that too when I'm done with a sales call or a customer call, it creates a transcript in my Google Drive. The agent just goes and picks it up on its own without me telling it what to do, and it figures out based on the call what it should be doing. So how do you do that? There's a couple of ways. If you're using Claude Cowork or Claude Code, you would have to keep your computer up and running, and you can set like a sort of there's a scheduling
Schedule.
command or dispatch, yeah, that'll do it. Um, but what we are doing, what we have developed internally at Refound is we're calling this the AI OS, the AI operating system, where we take the same concept as like Claude Code and Claude Cowork, which is an agent that is sitting on your computer, right? And we put that agent onto a remote server. And the
Okay.
remote server is always on, right? So I can shut my computer down, but the remote server is always on, and my Claude Code is running in that remote server. And so then it's able to, at 8 a.m. every morning, execute my morning briefing or my daily brief. Or it's able to, when I do an interview or when I do like a client call, it's able to just go to my Google Drive, detect what's happened, and then figure out what to do. So it's always running. And if you can set that up there, it's that's when you get true agentic automation. So an
Mm,
agent running on a virtual server, and then you can communicate it with that through Slack, through uh, through text messaging, through a custom UI too, a custom chat interface. If you create a
right.
custom chat interface, even through Cowork, if you turn that server into sort of like an MCP command, your Cowork can access it.
Right. 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 Amazing. Um, let's talk a little bit about your personal journey. Walk me through early experiences in tech and AI that shaped how you think about this new way of working today.
Yeah, I've been in tech and especially in AI for a long time. My early journey started off as in software engineering, and then I got into consulting actually. So I went into Deloitte as a tech consultant. So there was like some consulting experience there of like going into big companies, into mid-market companies and enterprises. And Deloitte basically was doing operations automations, right? Or they would come in and they would install SAP or Oracle or whatever for your operations. So I got to see that side of things. And then I realized that the big company kind of 9 to 5 wasn't for me. So I started my entrepreneurial journey kind of early. I started a company in South America because there was a program called Startup Chile. And so me and my co-founder back then, who's also now my co-founder on Refound, we went and we went to Chile. We lived there for a year and we built a company together. It didn't really go anywhere, but I loved it. It was a great experience. And then I then came back to Canada and I joined a startup. So I was working in a couple of startups here, and I got into like marketing and product management. So that started to be on the business side of things, marketing, sales, product. I then went out to Silicon Valley for a couple of years, and I started working with some tech companies there. That's where I got into AI in like 2019, very early.
Right.
Back then, the AI was absolutely nothing like what we have today. It was just, but it was good. It was like natural language processing and machine learning models and all of that kind of stuff. And I was getting into that. And then in 2020, when COVID hit, I came back to Canada from Silicon Valley, and I called back my friend who had worked on the startup within Chile, and I said, "Hey, I want to start something new, and like there's a lot of cool stuff happening in AI, and I think we can build an AI company." And at that time, there was this small company that no one had heard about called OpenAI,
Yeah.
and they had created a model called GPT-3, which was a state-of-the-art language model. And for the first time ever, they were giving it away, allowing people to access it through an API. And it was a small beta period, and I was lucky enough to get into the first hundreds of people who got access to this model in 2020. And we built a company on top of it. It was an AI marketing platform which would connect it to GPT-3 API and help you generate ad copy for your products or your landing pages or whatever. Now, back then, of course, GPT-3 was not as good as today. You have GPT 5.4 or Opus 4.7. It was not even close. And so we had a lot of people sign up and try it out. And some people were like, wow, this is cool. But a lot of the professional marketers who tried it were like, it's okay. It doesn't do as good a job as I would do.
Right.
So it didn't really take off the way I was hoping to. We did get some funding. It was very early, and so we shut it down. And then for about a year, I was just like doing some consulting, and I worked with a couple of other AI companies. One called Cohere in Canada, which is Canada's version of OpenAI, basically. And then the ChatGPT moment happened, right? Like in end of 22, OpenAI launches
Yep.
ChatGPT. Now everyone is like, oh wow, AI is a thing. And the VC that had funded us called me and said, hey, we want you to run this venture studio that we're starting and invest in AI companies because we think it's going to be big.
Right.
And you've been in the space for a few years, so you already know. So I came in, I joined them, ran that for a couple of years. And yeah, last year I started Refound because I saw that every company wants AI and we're moving to this agentic way of working and no one knows what that means or how to set that up. And there's a huge market there to do that.
And you got together with your partner from Chile?
Yes. Yeah.
How tell
Yeah.
me, so the whole story is amazing, but I want to go back a little bit. The LATAM connection is very interesting to me. I'm in Uruguay, Latin America, of
Yeah.
course. So tell me about that. How was for you living in Chile? Was that a culture shock or not? How do you remember those days? And what do you feel how do you feel the LATAM market in terms of talent or in terms of even the market itself is behaving nowadays? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Living in Chile was definitely a fun experience. It was mostly in Santiago. I had been to South America before that, and I spoke a little bit of Spanish. My Spanish is much better now. Like I've after living in Chile, and I lived in Colombia for a couple of years, so I'm basically fluent in Spanish. But yeah, I mean, Chileans also don't really speak Spanish. They speak Chilean, which is like a complex version of Spanish, right? Like I don't know if you've spoken to any Chileans, but like it's very hard to understand them. But like the Chilean government was starting this thing called Startup Chile, where they were trying to get entrepreneurs from around the world to come and start businesses there. And I thought it was very interesting. I think like there's still not a lot of support in funding for startups in Latin
Mm,
America. But there's a lot of like opportunity. There's a lot of people, especially in like even place like Colombia and Brazil, where and Argentina too, where they're really pushing people to start becoming developers and start companies. But I do think there needs to be more investment going into those companies and those startups to support the local entrepreneurship scene. I think it will happen. I think we're seeing, companies like Rappi, which are a big
yep,
success, and a few others that are starting to become successes. And hopefully, when those companies IPO or they get bought out, that money, that liquid capital goes back into the ecosystem, the way it happened in Silicon Valley, the way it's happening in Toronto.
yep,
And so, um, I love Latin America. I love the culture. I speak Spanish. I dance bachata. I do all of that kind of stuff. I listen to reggaeton all day long. But I know that's not like the culture, but like, uh, I think it's a great place to live, to work. I think the infrastructure is there. I think there's a lot of smart people and really good engineers and business people there. There's a lot of business opportunities. I think the only thing that's missing is the capital, but that will get there soon enough. The other thing is, I think now that with AI, capital is not as necessary as it was before.
right,
Because previously you need to raise money so that you could hire engineers, but now you have AI that does a lot of the engineering work. I think you could still get a product off the ground and get
yep,
some customers. And once you can fund yourself with the revenue there.
yeah, yeah. Amazing. Sid, thank you so much. I love your story. I love the whole LATAM connection. You've done so much over these years that it's amazing, and you've been in very particular importantly important times at the right time, right?
Yeah.
That beta trying that beta earlier version of OpenAI at that time surely gives you a lot of insight into the stuff that's going on today, and you've been around for a while. So Sid, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope that we can stay in touch and do this again sometime in the future.
Absolutely, Mateo. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's an honor.